Hello, hello. Welcome to the Dr. Toomer Talks Show. I am Dr. Catherine Toomer, and today we are going to talk about belly fat. Before we get there, I'm just going to let you know who I am. I am Dr. Catherine Toomer. I'm a family medicine and community health physician, and I'm the founder of Total Weight Care Institute. And what Total Weight Care Institute is a place where I help people maximize their health and wellness through weight care. And I teach other physicians how to provide compassionate and complete weight care to their patients so that they too can enjoy complete health. And so, what one of the things that I also do is I talk about all things health, wellness, and weight care. And today I want to talk about belly fat. And the reason is that's probably the number one reason I get people asking me for help. Weight is a symptom. I will say it over and over and over again. Weight is a symptom of something else that's going on, either something biologically or something psychologically or something socially or psychosocially. Therefore, when you notice that you're gaining weight or losing weight, even, or even not even if your weight's staying the same, but your body's changing, there's always a reason and there's always something going on. And it's that something else, that something going on that I look for and address. And so when people come to me and say, I can't get rid of my gut, I work out in the gym, I eat properly, and for my stomach won't go away, they come to me and I can tell you exactly why. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So, what exactly is belly fat? We call it belly fat, but essentially what it is is subcutaneous fat. It's fat that lies up under the skin that just makes our stomach disproportionately larger than the rest of our body. And that in and of itself isn't so much a problem other than it just bothers people that it's there, and many people don't like the way it looks on them. However, what that indicates is that there's usually fat below it. There's fat, this what we call visceral fat. That's the dangerous fat. That's the fat that's around organs that make them less efficient. That's the fat that clogs heart arteries. That's the fat that causes our heart not to work like it's supposed to, that makes our liver and our kidneys and our intestines not work the way they're supposed to. That's the fat that affects our immunity. That's the kind of fat that affects us, that puts us at higher risk if we ever need surgery. It puts us at risk for diabetes, hypertension, and other things. So that's why having, a big stomach really doesn't matter, except that it's an indication that something else is going on, and that something else could be something that's affecting your organs. And that is serious and that is important. And so that's why health related, what we call our hip to waist ratio, or waist to hip ratio. um, and the reason that is, so you measure your waist at your navel, you measure your hip, and then you put the number of your waist over your hip, and then whatever number you get is a good indication of where your health status is. So for women, we want that number to be less than 0.86. And for men, we want it to be less than 1. In other words, for men, we don't want your stomach to be larger than your hips. And for women, although there's a little more wiggle room, mainly because having fat in certain areas on women is actually reproductively protective. And so therefore, our ratio is a little bit different. But generally speaking, we have this issue more than likely because there's a hormonal shift in our body for whatever reason. And that hormonal shift is what causes our body to then take food and make fat out of it rather than fuel. And when our body does that, it just causes an issue. And therefore, that's why when we see, our abdomen, our stomach, our middle, our belly becoming bigger, disproportionately larger than the rest of our body, what that means is that something has been triggered. You have some hormone floating around your system that is making your body change what it does with food. It's taking mainly carbohydrates, especially. When you eat starches, there's a certain interaction that happen between insulin and trying to metabolize that. But there's other hormones like cortisol, which actually make that insulin not work very well. I talk about this a lot, insulin resistance. And that insulin resistance then makes it easy for our body to make fat. So it could be genetics, but usually it's our genetics when it meets something that gets triggered by stress or by medication or by some psychosocial issue like anxiety or depression. Um, Aging is another thing. Any of us who've been through menopause know that essentially as we get older, this starts to happen. But again, that's hormonally related. It's related to our estrogen dropping. And when our estrogen drops, our cortisol then becomes more unopposed. And when our cortisol becomes unopposed, it pushes us towards insulin resistance. And insulin resistance then pushes our body to make fat rather than fuel out of carbohydrates. So you see the connection. And it's also, so that's why glucose or carbohydrate, glucose dysregulation is the number one cause of belly fat and why our body makes it. And that's why we talk about beer bellies. And the reason that we get beer bellies is because beer is a carbohydrate. And that carbohydrate then um, can it's dysregulated. And so, because of genetics, not everybody who drinks a lot of beer gets a beer belly, but those of us who do, it's because our body doesn't regulate our carbohydrates, metabolize our carbohydrates very well. And before I continue, I'm just going to say hi. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jennifer, for coming. And at the end, I will have some opportunities for people to ask questions. So if you are listening and haven't said hello, please do. So that way I know you're here and I can answer your questions as they come up. So how do you control this? How do you make it go away? Now, you hear it all the time. I exercise a lot. Nothing changes. I eat properly. Nothing changes. And the reason that happens is simply because um, usually those are not the things that affect our our belly fat. Now, there are some things that help our metabolism, and there are some things that help our metabolic reaction to carbohydrates that we can do, and I'm going to talk about those. But the main thing we need to do is to control our metabolic environment. The number one thing we can do that's exercise is build muscle. Cardiovascular exercise, running, doing other things does not help much. Building muscle absolutely does. Because what that does is it makes your body address your muscle rather than try to make fat. The other is for those of us who are, as we age, for men, your testosterone drops, and for women, our estrogen drops. Both of them lend themselves to then having an environment that makes it very easy to make belly fat. Therefore, hormone replacement often helps to prevent it. It also helps to reverse it. And hormone replacement, I know is very scary for some people, but what it does is it becomes very protective. It protects our heart from heart attacks and from it protects our cholesterol levels. It protects us from dementia. And the only risk factor really are those who have a very strong family history of breast cancer. And even then, there are ways that to avoid it. And so it's always something to talk about with your doctor. But also, as we get older and our hormones drop, it also affects our sexual function. And when that happens, then it affects our psychosocial interactions. And when our psychosocial interactions get affected, it affects our other hormones. And then those other hormones cause fat production. So you see how they're all connected. And the other is to pay attention to weight. Now, as I mentioned, there are some people you lose weight and still your stomach just doesn't go away. Well, but you still need to lose it. And the reason is fat in our body disrupts our hormones. It disrupts our metabolism. It disrupts how our body manages food. And so removing that organ, that endocrine organ, that estrogen, that extra estrogen in our bodies is really, really important. because what it does is it helps our body get back to its normal state. When I say normal, I mean that's relative, but it helps our body work more efficiently when it's not fighting one system over another. So, fat loss is an important component in trying to lose belly fat first, also. But the number one reason, and I'm going to say this again, and you're going to hear me talk about this over and over and over again because it is so underappreciated and so under addressed. The number one way, if you're doing everything else, you lost your fat, you're exercising, you're eating well, and yet you're still not able to lose that belly fat, then it's stress. And you have to address your stress. You have to address your stress. Otherwise, nothing will change. And the way you do that, there's three ways of you have to address your stress either immediately with the action that changes your hormonal imbalance immediately, that drops your cortisol. You have your intermediate, which is essentially you learn how not to be affected by the stressors. And then the third, which is long term, you get rid of the stressors and you work on getting rid of them. And so the most immediate, which is dropping your cortisol, you can do that with exercise, different types of low impact exercise that help give you peace, you meditation, prayer. There is, and I'm just going to kind of go through my list because I had it written down because I didn't want to forget any. There are medications that help block the effects of cortisol. One of those is called the GLP-1, tirzepatide, which is one of the weight loss medications. And that's how it works to help kind of lower belly fat, is because it one of its components blocks the effects of cortisol, the stress hormone, on our body. Doing enjoyable activities, being around people that you love, um, being organized. It's amazing how being organized really reduces stress. And another that we under appreciate is time management. When we rush, our body can't tell the difference between rushing and being chased, and therefore our stress hormone goes up. So the second is the intermediate, and what that is to prevent your reaction to a stressor. That takes a little longer, that takes a little more work. And so what those are, there are medications that help with that if it's necessary, and that's something you talk about with your doctor. The other is therapy, and that's something you can talk to your therapist about. The other is self-development, learning skills on how to not let things affect you as much. Biofeedback and other ways of thinking and changing your mental state so that things coming at you just aren't as bothersome. And skill development, which is what I was just talking about. You learn how. It is a muscle. That muscle takes time to develop, and you have to work on it. It's not going to happen overnight. It's just like learning any skill, you just get better with practice. And so the third is the long term, and that's removing the cause. Of course, that's a little more difficult, particularly if the cause is a person. Sometimes you can't lose them because if your stress is caused by your children, you can't get rid of them. So what you can do is you go back to the other I talked about. You learn how to not let stressors get to you. You can make new friends, find a new job, move to a better location where you have more support. Those are things that take longer. They're long term, but once it happens, they lend itself to repeated support. And so, again, and then long term again is organization. You just kind of organize your life. You organize the things around you so that it makes it easier. It takes less time to do the things that you need to do in order to maintain your life and to take care of yourself. And so overall, again, the best way to get rid of belly fat is losing overall fat in your body. And if it doesn't go away, using muscle as a means of upping your metabolism. You can reduce the appearance of by tightening stomach muscles, but it still requires to remove the fat over those muscles, and that is by stress. Now, there is one thing though that requires surgery, and that is often with women, you'll have what's called rectus diastasis. And what that means is when we're pregnant, the muscles, there's like our muscles like this, and then there's this band in between, and that band gets stretched. And when that band gets stretched, it's really, really difficult to bring it back together. And sometimes that requires surgery, but that's not a fat thing. That is an actual anatomical change. And it just looks like you're fat, but you're not. The other is our hernias. And what that is, or that kind of what I was talking about, that band, sometimes holes will end up in there and fat underneath will push through. And of course, that is also needs to be fixed with surgery. And then, of course, there's liposuction, which is more permanent, but liposuction may remove the fat, but it does not improve health. That still requires removing the internal fat that's around organs that makes them less efficient. So if you have questions, I can answer them now. And I want to say hello to Shelly, Jambo-san Rafiki yangu. Thank you for coming. Hello, Antoinette, Angela, Linda, and David. Blair says, I miss my flat tummy. I miss mine too. However, mine went away because I have children. And if I had to choose between a flat stomach and my children, I think I'd keep my children. So I don't mind anymore. And Melba Martin says, praise the Lord through all whom all blessings flow. Thank you. Also with belly fat, are parasites a belly fat contributor? No. I mean, it's not a belly fat contributor. And now, if you have certain types of belly fat, types of parasites like tapeworm, it can make your stomach big because obviously they take up a lot of room in intestines. That is highly unusual in most parts of the world. And there are parts of the world where it's more prevalent, especially in warmer climates, in more tropical climates. But here in the United States, it's unusual. But that's a very rare reason that someone's stomach is big. Now, that's not fat. That's just a big stomach, and that's big for a different reason. Workman CJ says, hello, thank you. Christina, hi, Dr. Dewey, thank you for coming. And Irva says, hello. Jane asks, what would you say to those who are not losing weight with semaglutide? I'm 320 with huge apron belly. Okay. There are lots of reasons why semaglutide may not be working. One is the dose isn't adequate. And so depending on what dose you're on, it may not be high enough. The other is that it's not addressing the cause of your weight gain, or it's only addressing some of the cause of your weight gain. If stress is a huge component to your weight gain, then semaglutide is not going to touch it very much. There still needs other things to be done. The other is if you have a long history of trying to lose weight, and that included dropping calories really low, that also may have lent itself to muscle loss. And if you lose muscle over and over again through weight loss processes over years, it requires building that muscle back in order to lose weight. And because your metabolism just isn't going to support any further weight loss. And so it really is, and also making sure there's nothing underlying like thyroid issues as well. So if semaglutide is not working, then there's some other reason why your body is making fat. And it's a matter of finding out what that reason is and then going after it. Antoinette asked, did you say that muscle building is important to reducing belly fat? And hi again, Dr. Toomer. Yes, it is very important for a couple of reasons. One, it helps with the metabolic environment of your body. The other is that fat muscle building, especially abdominal muscle building, will help maintain a tightness. And so it will reduce the appearance. It doesn't necessarily make fat go away, but it will reduce the appearance of that fat. But to make the fat go away, it requires improving your metabolic environment, which muscle does. But the other is some people find weightlifting very relaxing. And so that actually can drop your cortisol and it makes you feel strong. The other thing that muscle building does, though, for your overall health is that it lends itself to healthier life later. When you're strong, your mobility is maintained. One of the reasons that people have difficulty when they get older and they lose their independence is because of their loss of mobility. Building muscle when you're younger will help prevent that when you're older. So it's really important to just get strong now while you can. So um, Jane Hamilton says you're on 2.5 milligrams. Um, That's really not a dose for semaglutide unless it's a compounded. Some compounds will go up to 2.5. 2.4 is usually the highest dose. So if it's, that there's some disconnect somewhere, but still, there's always a cause. Does semaglutide cause pancreatitis? No. It is connected to pancreatitis. And the reason it is rapid weight loss causes gallstones. Gallstones then lend itself to creating pancreatitis. When the gallstones come out of the gallbladder, it blocks the common bile duct. And what that means is that it backs in digestive enzymes back up into the pancreas and cause pancreatitis. So it's not a given that the medication, in fact, I've been prescribing these medications for over 10 years. We've been using them for diabetes for almost 20 years, and I have never seen a case of pancreatitis. The other is pancreatitis is not subtle. It doesn't just come on like that. Usually it's worsening nausea, gets worse and worse and worse. Then vomiting starts. Then the pancreatitis comes. So it's very easy to avoid pancreatitis if you pay attention to your symptoms and don't ignore them. Is drinking too much water could be the cause. Be the cause of what? Because there's the only danger of drinking too much water is if you have a congestive heart failure and your heart cannot handle the volume of blood that's created, or you have kidney failure and so your body can't get rid of the fluid. And then the third is brain swelling. If you drink too much water and your body gets too diluted, the salt in your body gets too diluted, it can cause brain swelling. Most people can't drink water to the point of that happening. So it really so it just depends on if drinking too much water doesn't give you belly fat. It makes your stomach bigger just because you've got your stomach full, but that's not fat. That's just size. Jane Hamilton said, thank you. You're welcome. But so Jane, let me just let you know and let everybody know I have a group. It's called Total Wellness Plus Weight Care. And you can actually join the group and ask me questions there. I will answer them in the group, and so that's one way of getting access to me. Steve says, hey, how are you doing? Can I ask you a question? What is you can give? Okay, so it sounds like that is someone that's probably not a question for here, Steve. The best way to give a 8-year-old a girl a question is to ask her parents what that gift should be. That's the best thing to do. Always ask the parents because the parents would know. Is it true that you can't lose fat in just your stomach? That is true. It's very difficult. Well, no, let me just rephrase that. You can't exercise your way to losing fat just in your stomach. It's very difficult to spot exit because the reason that you have fat in your stomach is a metabolic reason. So you have to go at it metabolically. And usually stress is that reason. So either stress or some decrease in hormone like estrogen. So that's why when we start going through menopause, our stomach starts getting bigger. And so one of the things that, losing fat may change your size, but it's only muscle building that will change your shape. You can use muscle to sculpt your body. in ways that losing fat will not. And then anything other than that really requires surgery, and that's not always necessary. I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of accepting it. Um, I am um, small. My stomach is not. I'm not going to do anything about it. Mainly because of pregnancies. Some of it is because of metabolic issues, because of my diabetes. So I know to keep my diabetes under control. And so I personally just find acceptance better than easier than anything else. But that's, again, it's up to you. Um, Lisa asks, how does one who is not on a GLP-1 and doesn't need it lose belly fat? After age 40 or so, I can't figure out how to lose it, and it's not too much, but more than I'd like. And I am doing weight training 2, 3 times per week already. Okay, so what it sounds like is perimenopause is contributing. So estrogen may be a contributing factor, and then stress. Stress is probably the number one reason that we maintain belly fat, and the reason why exercise won't make them go away. And so that's why I was talking about all the ways to reducing stress, because stress usually is the number one reason. It's cortisol reaction, and so reducing your cortisol is the best way of removing that fat. Once that happens and you're getting into a nice routine and it's still there may be other reasons, and some of it may simply be it's a reaction to having babies. There's other things, if you've ever had a cesarean section, anyone who's had cesarean knows that there's an apron sometimes that happens after surgery that just never goes away, and you just accept it. And that's kind of, um, that's the best thing. If we could just normalize women having stomachs after having babies and after going through menopause, that would kind of be the best way. Would be a good thing. Um, so you ask, is it a reason to look at estrogen levels replacement? The problem you run into with checking estrogen is that our estrogen levels fluctuate throughout the day. So the way we determine whether estrogen is being affected is usually in the regularity of your periods, of your menstrual cycles, because that's usually the first thing to start being affected. There are other symptoms, but I would just talk to a menopause expert. Now, one person that I do recommend listening to, go to her YouTube channel, is Dr. Rachel Rubin. She has a YouTube channel and she is very well versed on menopause. And she's actually who I go to listen when I have questions. And she's who I ask. And that's, Rachel Rubin, Rubin, on YouTube. That's a good place to start and get your questions answered. All right. So any other questions? So again, I'm just going to reiterate very quickly because I see some new people have joined. And so what we're talking about is belly fat. And so the way to address belly fat is to address our hormonal environment. And the best way to address our hormonal environment is to reduce our stress, either immediately, intermediately, or long term. And this is actually going to be available for replay on my YouTube channel, on blackdoctor.org, a YouTube channel, on our Facebook pages. So if you'd like to go back and you're listening again, just put hashtag replay so we know that you're here. And I appreciate you coming. So Workman says, thank you so much, Dr. Toomer. Hello, Retha. Nice to see you. So if you don't have any more questions, or if you have some later, you can always find me and ask me. So what I would recommend also is, like I said, I do have a Facebook page where I, do answer questions, and you can come in, and it is facebook.com/groups/total weight loss. And so that's how you find the group. And once you ask to join, of course, I'll let you in, and then you'll have access to ask me questions. All right. So if there are no more questions, I will see you next Tuesday. at Dr. Toomer Talk Show. And if you have any topics that you'd like me to speak on, just you can comment after this video and I'll see them, or you can send me a message and I'll see them there. All right. Oh, go ahead. Oh, thank you for coming, Shelley. I appreciate it. Um, oh, Jennifer says, per your information, I had an appointment with a menopause specialist. Started HRT a month ago. I had been on a 3-month pause on my weight loss, finally starting to lose again. Yeah, that's what happens because our body holds on to weight when our hormones aren't balanced. So, all right. Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad I helped. And thank you. And I'll see you next week. Good night.